Hey everybody, welcome to the Rochester Real Estate Show, joined today by Anthony Butera. What's up?
Back.
He's back. We are winding out the year here and wanted to take the opportunity to do 2020 real estate market year in review and definitely specific to Rochester.
So you
all that has happened.
Just so you know, you said 2020.
Oh God, we're going back to that. 2022 year real estate year in review. Let's do it. Lot to talk about, right?
Yeah, funky.
I think before we dive into like 2022, I think it's important to understand like 2020, 2021, the year before, like coming off of pretty much all-time highs, record breaking in every category, right? So home sales, home pricing, low interest rates,
Record breaking low inventory.
right? Yeah, low inventory. So it's just like, I guess what we're going to talk about today, a lot of it is, I mean, for lack of a better explanation, what goes up must come down in a way, in terms of like, and we'll get to it, like we're not going down necessarily or bottoming out by any means, but like you just can't sustain the hockey stick curve that we've been on, as if you're looking at a chart or a graph, right? Like it just, what's happened in the last 2 years leading up to this year, 2020, 21, and even, the couple of years prior to that, just very strong, intense seller market, fueled by low inventory, fueled by low interest rates, fueled by high rental rates.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just been, and we've beaten these topics to death, but it's been the perfect storm. And then it's not that the music stopped this year, but like, sure, the statistics are going to have a negative spin in comparison to what the last few years have been.
Yeah. So, you mentioned hockey stick because that's what the last couple of years have been, right? And now I feel like, no, we're not going to hockey stick. We're not going to flip that hockey stick around, but we just reached the long end of the stick again.
Right.
Like that's going to be another data point. And do I foresee values going up? Do I see them going up much moving forward? No. And what's moving forward? I mean, even in the worst years, you were talking a 1%, 2%, 3% increase in value, but we're not going to go through what we just went through for a while, right?
Yeah.
And I think that from a consumer standpoint, the experience of buying or selling real estate is going to change. The experience is going to change with experience, right? Because the market that we have been in, like, listen, we're really good at what we do. And I'm speaking for the whole real estate community, saying like, we're really good at what we do. And some agents just have more experience than others, right? And the market that we have been in, anybody with a sign in their trunk that they could hammer into a front lawn, or a buyer that pre-qualified for way over the list price, where they had a fighting chance when they're writing on a home that they liked, and they're one of 25 offers and they got their offer accepted. It hasn't really, the market has not needed our expertise like it's needed now and moving forward, right? And I feel like agents got fat and happy during those times, right? And it was almost like you couldn't lose. And even when the inventory was going down, the average sales price was superseding the percentage of inventory down by median sales price up, right? So,
right. And more so like just total transactions, right? Meaning like if you're looking at sales and sales volume, if your sales transaction wise dropped 10%, the volume may have increased 15% in those years, and you're thinking you're killing it, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's now where are we already, right? If we just go back 12 months ago compared to where we are right now, interest rates way higher. Historically speaking, they're still not bad, but way higher than the environment we were living in. And we lived in that same environment where buyers could stretch their spend because the interest rate allowed them to do so. Now they got to be more strategic, right? Yes, there's less competition. And yes, you can't spend as much as you were pre-qualified for 12 months ago.
Table the interest rate conversation, because I think that's going to control a lot of what we talk about on this episode for 2022. I want to go back to the point you're making, really about the skills needed as an agent in this market to represent your clients properly. And let's just call it what it is. I mean, you haven't had to do a ton of negotiating.
No.
I mean, basically the market's been, sellers are just picking what they like best. And maybe there's a little bit of fine tuning to really, better their situation even more as a seller. And sure, that takes skill as an agent, but, and then buyers, the last couple of years, it's just been a conversation around like, hey, I know there's 15 offers, on the low end in some cases. Let's look at what you're comfortable with financially is hopefully what the conversation is. And yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Buyer, but unfortunately, the way the market's playing right now is we can't really have any contingencies. So that would position you to be the strongest. You tell me what you're comfortable with, and we'll do what we can to get it to stick from there. But there hasn't been opportunity where a list agent and a buyer's agent are like back and forth negotiating on terms or price or whatever. Because as list agents, you haven't had to. It's just everybody's known, like, put your highest and best forward. And if you get picked, great. If not, try another one.
Yeah. So, what I'm seeing already is buyers in the market that we have been in the last couple of years, up until where we are now and moving forward, buyers had urgency. If they didn't, they realized after they wrote one offer that didn't get accepted that they have to have urgency if they want a fighting chance on getting an offer accepted. So buyers were conditioned for the market at hand because they realized they had to succumb to the fact that there's no room to negotiate. How much can I possibly spend on this home? And hey, I'm protected because I'm locking in at this interest rate at 3%. Right. Now the challenge moving forward is consumer urgency, right? Buyer and seller. We're gonna have to create urgency from buyers and sellers. And what I mean by urgency is like, I don't want it to sound dirty, but we need to be able to paint the picture that we're living in now, while most consumers are living in the picture from 12 months ago, and they're comparing their home to the one that sold for $300 across the street that sold 12 months ago. It's not that your house has gone down in value. Buyers can't spend what they were able to spend just 12 months ago.
Right. And the way to get to that 300 is going to be a different method in a different market. I mean, it's just, it's been an auction-based market for lack of a better way to describe it in the last few years. And now we're starting to head to more balance. Like this will be a topic, like we're still in a seller's market from the standpoint of the inventory can't meet the demand of the buying pool, even though it's reduced. But
yeah, so the interest rates, Jason, they've been working coincidentally in the fact that cost of living, right, has gone up substantially, and the interest rate's a byproduct from trying to control cost of living. So if there's a lack of urgency, that's where today's fears are, right? Because your average family that had an extra $400 at the end of the month to spend discretionary, like they can't do that anymore, right? Now all of a sudden they're noticing, where's the money? Well, yeah, I mean, you go grocery shopping 4 times in that month, your grocery bill is going up $100 a week for that. The money's gone, right? So people are just going to be very cautious. But the good part, like, the economic outlook was way better than they anticipated, right? We're still gainfully employed. Unemployment rate's still at an all-time low. Yeah. And that's subject to change, but not anytime in the near future.
No, I mean, when you unpack everything, just, from a global economic perspective, and just if you were watching the news 12 hours a day, I mean, you would probably step outside and think like, a bomb went off or whatever, right? For perspective's sake. And I think the point you make, like that more expensive grocery bill and more expensive gas, more expensive, utilities, RG&E in our market, stuff like that. Like, so here's how it really affects the real estate market. Well, now that same house that you would bought in 2021 or 2022 and buying it 2023, it's going to be $400 more.
Yeah.
And now you've lost your cushion, right? $400 more per month. And
because of the interest rate compounded.
It's just more restricted. It's tighter for everybody.
Yep.
All right. So that's really the catalyst to things changing this year, because there has been change, ton of it. The catalyst to it is the interest rate. And obviously in our industry, just as an aside, like mortgage interest rates are different than what you hear about with the Fed, and that, Powell raising the rate every month by 3/4 of a point or 1/2 of a point. They're not directly correlated, but don't get me wrong, there is an effect. But at the end of the day, I mean, we saw, talk about record breaking, the jump from, near 4% at the end of last year. And to recap, like the 2 years prior, I mean, God, there was a time in the high 2% for a 30-year mortgage, right? Like just unheard of. So to get from there to 3.5 to near 4 this year, like just everything aligned in terms of the past, history of the last few years or so, and even decade or so, with stimulus and this and that, war in Ukraine, just all sorts of energy, all sorts of factors in play to where, leading to inflation ultimately, which is another big topic for the year, and the reaction of the powers that be, as I typically put it, is, okay, we've got to fight this by cooling things down in the form of raising interest rates.
Yep.
We've talked about it. This is all by design.
It is. And like, if you look historically, right, this is not, the rates are still good right now. What has happened though is consumers had to choose so many changes that now they have indigestion, right? Like that's the analogy, because it's all changed in such a short period of time. Never historically have the rates gone up 50% or 100%, right, in that short period of time.
And throughout the year, early spring, 4 to 5 to 6, we got to 7.5 in some cases, in an obnoxiously quick amount of time. Like, history aside, like there's just one day jumps that were massive that left people like, what the hell is going on? When does this stop? People were fearful of, like, okay, get ready for 10, 12, 15 doom and gloom real scenarios. The good news right now, sitting at the end of the year, December of 2022, like we're settling in. We're hopeful that it settles in even more, and maybe we end up in the 5s as just a steady rate. Like right now, it's like right around 6 right now. So, just the increase that happened, period, caused a lot of the change in the market. The increase mainly due to combating inflation. And then just how much it increased and how much of an impact that had. I've never been shy to say, like, if you don't have to move, like earlier in the year when it was really wonky and like, we were above 7, if you don't have to move, like I wouldn't. So it seemed like sky is falling, right? Like, why would you make a big financial move at this point across any, platform or mechanism or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah, and like
sit tight.
I was gonna say though, right? So like record low inventory of listings, even in the market that we were in, as strong as it was, like that didn't get a lot of sellers off of the fence, right? So now, right, for our challenge in our world is objection handling, the reasons why, right? And like you just said, if it doesn't make sense, we're going to tell you that it doesn't make sense, because listen, we're busy. We want to make sure we're investing our time in something that's going to put you in a better position, right? Don't want to force anybody into anything, because the reality is those situations where the sellers just go along for the ride and everything you're saying, not questioning themselves, those are the deals that die at the closing table. They get cold feet. So we don't want to invest time into that or go down with that ship. Yeah. Right. So a lot of things are just, they're symptoms of the market. And I have been, Jason and I do masterminds all the time with other real estate agents. And I've been getting lenders to come on because the lenders have unveiled more new, unique products in the last 90 days than the 5 years prior to that. Because now they realize they have to circumvent what's happening right now. They have to get creative to try and get people off the fence, right? Lenders need buyers, and buyers don't. The problem is buyers have nowhere to go without sellers, without listings. So there's been a lot of creativity of late to still try to make transactions take place.
Yeah, and what's interesting with it all is just, reflecting on the last few years, a lot of the conversations we have go like this in terms of, okay, yeah, great, my house is worth more than it's ever worth. I can cash in. I got a ton of equity. Where the hell am I going? Yeah. And or unwillingness to make a move at what homes we're selling for or are selling for, right? So it's like the, can have your cake, but you can't eat it too type of thing, right? It's like, yeah, you're going to sell your house for more than ever, but sure, it's not like you're going to turn around and buy something at a discount in the same, climate.
The sellers with the most urgency right now are the sellers that are moving to Florida right now.
Right. Sure.
Right. Like,
I mean, and that's really been, unfortunately, like that's one of our main inventory producers, right? Is like relocation out of here, where a seller's just selling. They're not worrying about buying locally and finding somewhere and, having to, make sure they're happy making the move and it makes sense. We're getting the hell out of Dodge and just put the house up. We can be out in 45, 60 days.
Yep.
Hate saying it, like, okay, easy enough, right? I mean,
it's happening, and they're going. Most of them are, they're moving down south, whether it's Florida, Tennessee, Carolina, and most of them are renting for a year. They're finding a townhome. They're getting acclimated to the community to see where they really want to live, and that's the reality. That's New York. I always joke that New York State, where our number one export is human beings, but it's not far-fetched. Right.
Unfortunately. I mean, we have a lot of good things going on. The one negative in this market would be that aspect of people flocking away from it for whatever reason. Yeah. I think a topic worth diving into even more, that we're on it right now, but this inventory topic, like it's gotten worse. It's already been like, that's the one extreme that hasn't been leveled out yet in 2022, and really no end in sight. Is like, okay, the rates came off the extremes, the bidding wars came off the extremes, the selling for over asking price to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars came off that extreme. Like, we're not in this like all of a sudden additional surplus of homes available for sale to try to create balance.
And that there's still such an inventory shortage when our busiest department on our team is new construction right now. Like,
sure,
can barely keep up with the contracts. The builders having a tough time building as fast as people want to. And what I say is, it's an issue because the cost to build has gone up just as much, if not more, than the average sales prices have. So you know that people are just saying, there's nothing out there to buy. Let's just build.
So, I mean, with that said, I don't think we touched on it necessarily on the interest rate conversation, but it's fairly obvious in that, like, okay, buying power diminishes.
Yep.
Cost goes up to buy a home, to own a home. Demand is inevitably going to be reduced. And that happened.
Yeah.
Right. Is a good recap of 2022.
Yep.
The inventory, the seller side of the economic equation here didn't improve at all, got marginally worse in terms of statistics year over year of, homes listed for sale, right?
Yep.
And, again, we're just still in this seller's market by definition. It's just less extreme because there's that many fewer buyers out there shopping in 2022 is essentially the story of the year.
Yeah.
Compared to years past, but still, relatively extreme conditions because there's not that balanced level of supply and demand.
There's not. And yet, like, to me, if you're staying put in the area for a long period of time and you want to buy a home, like, and I know like personality differences, right? I mean, you're way more conservative than I am, right? So there's personality differences. The way that I see it, because I had a front row seat for the past 10 years of our real estate market, my biggest regret is that I didn't buy every single house that I listed.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I would have watched all of those houses go up in some cases 2x from the value that we sold them for. Right? Like you look back at all those things.
Absolutely, especially when you're talking 10 years ago and even 5 years ago.
Yeah, but everyone plays in the micro, game. And it's like what's happening right now. Well, forget, like, listen, you need an extra bedroom. If your family needs a different house, like go for it. As long as you're financially sound. I don't want anybody to overextend themselves, but to let temporary conditions affect your plans, to me, is always like, because me, I don't operate like that. If I want something, I'm going to do what I have to do to get it. And I'm going to go after it. And a lot of times it may not make sense, but I know that my best friend is time.
Sure.
Right?
That's key with real estate.
Yeah.
As a topic in general, like real estate, whether it's an investment, whether it's the home you're living in, as far as owning it, like it shouldn't be a short-term venture. I mean, you're flipping a house and that's the intention, different story. But real estate takes time to appreciate.
So Jason, if we went back 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And we looked at interest paid, right? Sure. Let's just say the rates were 6%. Going back 10 years, and you looked at interest paid, because that's the fear right now, is the interest rate. Well, guess what happens? The average sale, your home value far outpaced the interest rate that you were worried about paying, that you were deducting from your taxes along the way. Oh, and by the way, you had shelter, right?
And you're obviously building equity in that pursuit too. Even without the massive gains that the market has seen, appreciation-wise, home values going up, right? Even if you bought $100,000 house and it's worth $100,000 10 years later, you're paying down that loan. That's equity.
Yep.
And that's just, obviously that's not what's happened over the last 10 years or 5 years or 1 year.
Yeah.
So, the alternative being, okay, I mean, whatever, if you're living for free somewhere, then you're solving that basic human need of shelter. And so you can make an argument you're good to go. Otherwise, the argument would be you're spending money on rent. Like you're doing nothing for yourself other than paying for a place to live.
Yeah. And I know it's cliche and I've been probably beating it up too many times, but the interest rate on renting is 100%. Like that's the reality.
It's true.
Right?
From the
So it's
standpoint
tough.
of you're not doing yourself any favors other than having a place to stay.
Yeah, but listen, you're 25 years old, you're in mom and dad's basement, stick for another year. God knows those were my best years, right? And yet, if it's time, don't let the interest rates or what the temporary market conditions are hold you back from doing something in your life. And that's where I struggle as well, right? Because sometimes you got to have balls and you got to make a move, right? And if you're young enough, any decision that you make is going to recover because of the time that you have. I'm not giving the same advice to the couple that's 75 years old.
Right.
They don't have the same amount of time. And yet, like if you're 55 and younger, time is your best friend.
Sure.
Right? Because if we look at what the values have been doing, even with the interest rates people have been paying, they've been living in their house for free because the values have gone up that much. Right. But no one wants to look at 10-year trends. They want to look at 90-day trends.
And I think that's part of the problem with real estate in general, right? Is it's intended to be a long game. And it's so difficult for people to wrap their heads around anything but the short term or the now. Yeah. And there's where the disconnect is, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's really never a bad time as long as you're financially comfortable, like you said.
Yeah.
And as long as you're buying a home that you like and you're not going to hate it and you have to turn around and sell it 6 months later for whatever reason, like it's really never a bad time. And you can't time the market.
No.
Like nobody, it's easy to have the conversation we're having now with perspective of the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Nobody in their right mind, I don't care who they are, nobody would have predicted in 2016 what would have happened the following 6 years, up until today.
Never.
Right? And especially in Rochester, New York, where like we don't see, 50% gains across the board over that short of a time.
Yeah. Or we didn't used to. Right now we could say we never used to.
Right.
We became that volatile market that we always used to read about in the paper. Like, we experienced the South Florida fluctuation for the first time, right? We had some of the hottest zip codes in the nation for the first time in a long time, right? So there's still a desire to live here. And I think that is only going to go up over time.
I agree.
Right? You look at what happens on the West Coast. We live in a Great Lakes area. 33% of the country's water supply comes from the Great Lakes. Like we don't realize how fortunate we are to have that, right? And I think people are going to be more focused on that, especially after seeing what everybody went through with COVID and what else could take place in the future.
Somebody told me recently that you may as well consider us to be the Napa of the East.
Yeah,
and like mind blown because I can. I wouldn't expect a direct correlation there, but like I could tie a lot of logic to that. We got wine country. We got all 4 seasons. We got skiing down the road. We got, many lakes, right? Summer, good stuff to do. It's just things are happening here.
Yeah, no, it's a great
place. Avoid hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, mudslides,
Yep.
Drought, whatever.
Yeah.
So all right, let's further unpack 2022. Like I started off saying, like what goes up must come down. Like, why didn't it go down this year?
Because the lack of inventory, right? It would have gone down. If we didn't have an inventory issues, the values would have gone down. We're still seeing some homes get 15 offers on them. And when you dig a little bit deeper, you notice that, well, yeah, that makes sense. If you get a town like Aranacoit and there's only 13 listings in the entire town, chances are there's 50 buyers that need to move into that town. And with only 13 listings, you're still going to have those examples. They're happening way less frequently than they were the past couple of years. Because for every one of those examples, we have 15 examples that are sitting on the market and going past delayed negotiations.
And most likely because they're at a wrong price point, which is like trying to get last year's number and then some.
Yeah.
Right.
Their agent is using their 2021 and early 2022 data to price these homes, and you're falling victim to it. In the pursuit to get top dollar, you're going to receive bottom dollar. And I know that like it's going to sound salesy. Well, of course you want to sell it for the least amount of money. Why? I'm not incentivized to sell your home for the least amount of money, right? It's just we need to price it strategically where we're showing value and we get multiple offers.
Yeah. And that's just, we talked about the skill set and of an agent. And I mean, it's just the reality, I guess, of what we've been living through.
Yeah.
It seems like you could just throw something up online, throw a sign in the yard, and the rest takes care of itself.
Yeah. And it did.
Your seller ends up happy because they got, all sorts of great offers.
Yeah. And
that strategy is ultimately like where people are feeling the pain, if they are feeling any in 2022, from my listing's not selling or my house isn't selling. Like what's going on?
Yeah.
Like you had the strategy from 12 months ago or 6 months ago. It's not working now. You got to pivot.
Yeah. And like from a consumer standpoint, right? Like when they're seeing comps even close today, like, listen, that's not the market we're playing in right now. You see something that sold today, that means it closed. That means it went under contract 2.5 to 3 months ago. We were playing in a different market.
Now, correct me where I'm wrong on your logic, but like this also isn't saying that, okay, it's not saying that price point isn't in play necessarily, but it's just we got to have the proper strategy in place to get what this house deserves for you, right? Yeah. And that's where it's like, either it's botched there to where it becomes a difficult process to sell and it ends up costing, and I say costing, I think it's still like marginal, right? We're not talking like, okay, you botched the strategy and you cost your seller $100,000, most likely. But it's just capitalizing on what is still an opportune market for sellers. And if you don't have the right strategy in place, then it's not going to play out the way that it should.
Yeah, your agent needs to instead of pulling data from comps that sold 90 days ago that went under contract 6 months ago, right? We need to find a comp that just went under contract, right? Like it literally just accepted an offer that's like or close to your home. That's the data that we need to use. That's the market we're playing in right now, right? And don't get me wrong, the stuff that just closed, it's data, but we have to dig deeper. We have to know what's happening right now. Like, hey, listen, I've got a potential listing coming up. Same home as the one you just listed. It's actually a few streets down. Talk to me about how many showings you had. Did you hold an open house? Was it successful? How many offers did you have? Right. So it's doing your due diligence when we're coming off a market where no due diligence was required. It was like, hey, sellers, no matter what I price your home at, it's going to sell for over that. Right. And if you're working with a buyer, your experience was as good as their financials were.
Right. And their willingness to be aggressive.
Yeah.
All right. What do we miss? It's a good summary of the year, right?
Yeah, I would say.
At the end of the day, I think you're gonna see, the year-end reviews that come up through various news sources, whatever. They're going to be talking about the market being down.
Yeah.
And down double-digit percentage-wise. And it is from the standpoint of that many fewer homes sold in comparison to last year, which again, near record-breaking year last year, all time.
Yeah.
So, I think the best way to describe it is like we were just on, and this is where anybody could have predicted this for the most part, the run that we were on for the last 2-3 years plus was just unsustainable. This was the year that it stopped, mainly because of inflation and interest rates. And it's not the end of the world.
No, it's corrective. So it's corrective solutions, right? What they're doing with the interest rate, they're correcting the market, right? They're controlling inflation. So they're all going to work together, and we'll be just fine. This is not going to look like it did in 2008, 9, 10, 11, because of the unemployment rate being so low. People are still gainfully employed. So that's the good side. When I got in the business, same time you did, right? Like you literally couldn't give a house away to anybody.
Yep. Yeah. No, and I mean that corrective comment is it, because if this didn't happen, well, and now we're talking about another year with what, a 30% price growth, and then another year after that, like now all of a sudden, now we're in problem territory, because now the average price point in Rochester, New York is 350,000 when it has no business being that.
That's D-Day news.
Right. I'm talking 350 for, average, like a home in the city or gate, not Pittsburgh, right? So yeah, I mean this had to happen. Here's the encouraging news that I have from a statistics standpoint. I love these stats for our market in Rochester, and this is about a month old, but still relative. We're nationally, so this is data pulled from the top 93 U.S. metro areas with a population of 750,000 plus. So Rochester fits that bill, the greater Rochester area, right? Top 5 market for the least amount of pending home sales decline year over year, meaning, a lot of other markets have had significant drops, and our drop has been very minor. Top 5 market for least amount of new listing inventory decline. So yeah, supply isn't cured and has gotten worse, but not as bad as others, and a small decline. We're still the number one in the next 2 categories nationally. Number 1 market for the percentage of homes that sell above their list price. And number 1 market for homes that are selling, in the shortest amount of time, least amount of days on market.
Yep. And that's just it, right? So we have no shortage of examples where people purchased 12 months ago in Austin, Texas for $1.5 million. And today they're worth about 900,000. Yeah. Right. Like we're blessed that that's not our market.
This is a different podcast. Yeah. This is a different year in review in other markets. Yeah. Most of this is relevant to us. Yeah. That's a great point that you make, is like, yeah, that's where the news is going to,
it's the data they're pulling,
how much pain there is in the real estate market. And yeah, that example there is. And there's even, I've seen, what was it? It was a few weeks ago, like big percentage of homes that are underwater from last year.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, when you take that type of scenario in other bigger markets and you just purchased last year, and now the market's correcting, well, sure. But if you purchased last year, why are you selling this year? And don't get me wrong, there's always reasons that are, for the most part, unfortunate, like life happens. But otherwise, like if life didn't happen, hopefully you weren't buying last year or the year before and now just wanting to sell because for non-need based reasons, right?
Yep.
So good stuff.
Awesome. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yes, sir. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, all that stuff. Love it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope you have a great holiday season. We will catch you again in 2023.
See ya.
Hey.